I am so excited tonight to share with you. We'll have Rosemary share with you her artwork, but for me, this is a special treat. Rosemary's like my sister. We are both from Brooklyn, New York, and she was a little ahead of me at Antioch. And every time I would take a course, people would be like, "Oh, you remind me of Rosemary." And then finally, when I got to meet Rosemary, we were fast friends. We became fast friends. And for me, it's been an incredible opportunity to see Rosemary begin as an artist and then really flourish as an artist. And her artwork of wildlife is breathtaking and bold and gorgeous and really powerful. And she's going to tell you about how she chooses what she paints, and I don't know what else she's going to say. So I want to turn it over to Rosemary Conroy, a fabulous contemporary wildlife artist who lives right in Ware, New Hampshire. And maybe you can go by and check out her studio in Francistown, where she has open studio hours. So I would give Rosemary a big hug at this point. So I'm going to blow her kisses. Rosemary, take it away, honey.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. It's so nice to be invited to do this talk. I don't know if people can see. I'm hoping you can see my screen, the images that I'm going to present, because otherwise it's just going to be me going blah blah blah, and that's not that interesting. This whole like Zoom talk thing is really different than I'm used to, so just bear with me. So the Harris Center is a very special place in my heart, and I was so honored to be asked to have a show there for the 50th anniversary. And I'm working on it now because I had like no deadline now, so of course I could procrastinate for a long time. But I'm really looking forward to having that next year, I hope. And I guess I first came to the Harris Center when I was a student at Antioch, and I met Mead. Hi, Mead. I know you're on there somewhere. And he just, like, it was the best 2 years of my life going to Antioch, and I got to go spend time in the woods with all these amazing naturalists, and that sort of led me to this path, but I will talk a little bit more about that a little bit later on. So I call myself a contemporary wildlife artist, and I am just obsessed with animals. People keep asking me, like, I just opened this new studio in Ware, and so people are coming into my studio and they say, "So animals, that's what you paint?" And I'll go, "Yep." And they go, "That's all you paint?" And it's like, "Yep." Because I'm just obsessed. I can't stop. I'm not done yet. Maybe someday I'll be done and I'll start painting barns or something. But for now, it's wildlife, because I feel like it's my mission in life to celebrate wild animals and all of nature. And I just want people to understand how beautiful and wonderful and mysterious the natural world is. And it's kind of interesting that one of the silver linings of COVID is that people are spending more time out in nature. And I think maybe like they're starting to realize this too, people who were too busy for it before. There we go. Okay, so like I said, I've been painting for 15 years now, and I've been getting bigger and bigger in my art. And I think my goal is to connect people with wild animals in a way like people connect with each other. I want you to look them in the eye. I want you to see their innate divinity, just like people have an innate divinity. It's like in yoga, we say the divine in me recognizes the divine in you, which is what namaste is supposed to mean. And so that's what I'm hoping to get, is people to connect to wild animals through my art. Carl Jung wrote this wonderful quote: "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And I feel like I'm so privileged because I feel like I'm becoming who I truly am. And it's such a gift to be able to do this work. I feel so grateful and so lucky to be an artist. And just, I can't say that enough, how grateful I am. So I've always loved animals. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, which we weren't exposed to many animals growing up in the wilds of Brooklyn. It was a different kind of wildlife there. But I had a lot of stuffed animals, and probably in that baby carriage there was probably a stuffed teddy bear, because I really wasn't into baby dolls as much as I was into animals. And this woman is my grandmother, Rose, and I was named for her, and she was so encouraging and so wonderful. So I just want to give a shout out for grandmas, because grandmas rock, and anybody who's a grandma or had a grandma or will be a grandma, is so important. The love that you give is so, so important and has a lifetime of meaning. So I started painting from a very early age. It's funny because this is one of my very first paintings, and it's a lot like the last painting I just did. I mean, my style hasn't really changed that much, but I've always just been obsessed with animals. Like, I started copying drawings out of books, and I started copying anywhere I saw a drawing of an animal or a photograph of an animal, I would just sit down and start copying it. So when it came time to go to college and I said to my parents, wow, I really want to go to art school, they were like, we don't know about that. They didn't understand what artists did. I mean, I'm not sure I did either at the time. And they said, why don't you get a good job? Why don't you go to college and get a practical degree, and then you can do that art thing later, maybe someday. And so I said, I don't know why I said yes, but I was 18, and you know, you're so dumb when you're 18. You don't know what you're saying yes to or no to. So I got a job working in New York City. I went to college in New York City at Pace University, and I got a degree in business management. And I got a job. My first job was in the World Trade Center doing tech support for stockbrokers. And this is actually the top of the World Trade Center, this photo. I hope you can all see the photos. And yeah, it was a different kind of life. I wasn't really that into it, I have to say. I had to wear pantyhose every day, which still gives me the shudders to think about. And I had to ride the subway every day, and I had to go sit in a beige cubicle and like under fluorescent lights, and it just really wasn't for me. And then one day I went to Prospect Park, which is Brooklyn's Central Park, if anybody knows Brooklyn at all. And there was this group of people in one part of the park near us. I was with my friend, and we were walking around. I'm not even sure why I went there. It was such a weird thing because I never went there before. And I saw this guy, and he said, hey, you want to see something? Come here. And if anybody, Susie probably knows this, when you grow up in Brooklyn, if a guy says, hey, do you want to see something? You never say yes. You never, ever say yes. So, but he was with a group of people, and there was something about him. And so I just said, all right. And he gave me his binoculars, and he, lined me up with them, and he showed me this bird, a rose-breasted grosbeak. And it was one of the most amazing things I'd ever seen to that point in my life. Like, it was so exotic and beautiful and amazing that this bird was here in the middle of New York City. And it was like that, the Wizard of Oz, when Dorothy goes from like the dusty black of Kansas, or the black and white of Kansas to the Emerald City. It was like that. It changed my life. This bird changed my life. So this bird led me to, I put this quote up, I'm jumping ahead of myself a little bit, but the bird it led me down this whole other path. And I ended up quitting my job and moving to New Hampshire and starting Antioch, and just started this whole nother world. But so John Irizarry was the man who had the binoculars, and he was a light in my darkness. So thank you, John. So I became an obsessive birder. I loved birding. I think we were just talking about how when I moved to New Hampshire, it was so shocking to me, because when you go birding in New York City, there's certain places you go and the birds are there, and it's like, you go to Central Park during spring migration, and there's a certain patch of trees, and every tree has like 12 different species in it. And then I moved up to New Hampshire, and I was so excited. I remember walking out the door the first day and going like, oh my God. Or I should have said, probably back then I said, oh my God. But there could be birds anywhere. There were so many trees. There was so much open space. It was just amazing and a little overwhelming, but I managed to get through it. And from Antioch, which was, as I said, amazing experience, and I got connected to the Harris Center through that, and Mead, and so many wonderful people. And from there, I got, this was my internship at Antioch. I got to work at Sergeant Camp as their nature center gal, as they called me. And I got, one of the coolest things was that I got to work with this owl whose name was Snappy. And that was the first time I ever looked a wild animal in the eye, I think, and had it look back at me. And we had this relationship, and it just kind of opened up this other window to like, oh, there's these beings here that I never, I mean, I loved birds and I thought about birds and I was obsessed with birds, but I had never thought of birds as individuals before. And Snappy was sort of the ambassador for that for me. And that was sort of a turning point as well in my life, although I didn't really know it at the time. And then from there, Mead helped me get a job at the Society for the Protection of New Hampshire Forests. Thank you, Mead. And that was a wonderful experience. I got to be their communications director and I got to work on their magazine and I got to do so many wonderful things. It was so wonderful being part of an organization that was working for something as important as protecting open space. And it was just a really, truly wonderful experience. I'm so proud to have been part of that. I worked there for almost 11 years. Some of you might know me from a program I did as part of that job, which was called Something Wild. And we did this program on New Hampshire Public Radio for, now it's 20 years, that's insane. But I did it for, I think I did it for almost 10 years. I did it while I worked at the Forest Society, and then when I left, I did it as a freelancer. And then when the recession hit back in 2008, they laid me off, but it was actually okay because I was ready to start painting full time by then. So this is a terrible logo of the, sorry, I should fix that. So in 2001, we were getting ready to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Forest Society, and I was very involved in the preparing for that. And I remember we were sitting down to have this meeting about the keynote address that Jane Diffley was going to give. And all of a sudden somebody turned on the TV and said, oh my goodness, this thing is happening and it's crazy. And of course, 9/11, we all know what happened. And I used to work in that building. I mean, I worked there. I wasn't there at the time, of course. And it was just so devastating as it was for so many people. It wasn't, you know, and it's just so life-changing because it made me think about all those mornings that I got up and got out of the subway in my pantyhose and my little gray power suit and my high heels and thinking like, this is so not what I want to be doing. I didn't know what I wanted to do at that time, but I thought, someday I want to be an artist. Someday I'm going to be an artist. Someday I'm going to get to do this. And I just remember thinking that morning about all those people who went to work that day and we're never going to have their some days. And it was just like, you know, wake up call. Like, wow, if you want to have that someday, you can't wait. You can't just put it off. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. So I decided my someday was like soon. And so I quit the Forest Society and I became a full-time artist. And it just happened to be right around the time I turned 40 because it took me 2 years to save up money to quit. And then I actually was 40 when I quit. And I love this quote because it really is true. Life really does begin at 40. Up until then, you're just doing research. So I became an artist. I started out painting landscapes and I started going out in the field, which was like two of my favorite things, being in the field and painting. Like, I didn't know you could do that. That was cool. And I was painting all these landscapes and I realized there's so many really wonderful landscape painters in New Hampshire. Like, New England is just teeming with landscape painters and I always have to be different. And so I thought, what else can I do? And Stan Moeller was a teacher I was taking classes from at the time, and he said, notice the things you notice. That's what you should paint. And I went, oh, I know what I notice. I'm always out in the field with binoculars. I notice birds. That's what I should be painting. I notice animals. I notice all kinds of animals, big animals, little animals. I owed birds, of course, owls, fox, bears. These were all my early works. And so I started doing portraits of animals because I had also taken a portrait painting class at the time. And the teacher came up to me and she said, wow, you're really good at portraits. Maybe you should consider being a portrait painter. And I went, oh, I don't know if I want to paint people, and it was right around that time Stan said, maybe you want to, you know, think about what you notice. And I thought, oh, portraits of animals, boom, that's what I'm going to paint. And so I started doing that and I started being, getting some recognition for that. And I had some shows around and it was really wonderful. This was a picture from a show I had at the View Museum in the Adirondacks, which was a really wonderful place. And so I started going to study animals because I'm not a morning person. And so I'm not really good at being that person who gets up at like 4 a.m. and gets into a tent and like covers themselves in like camouflage and sits there with their camera. That's like so not me. So I just decided like I would go to these rehab centers where they had animals in captivity and I could study them there. So the Swan Lake Science Center was one of the places that I went to, and they were such wonderful people there. If you've never been, I highly recommend it. And so I started painting their animals. And this is from a series I did called Further Insight, which I wanted to get even closer into an animal. And so they had all kinds of wonderful beings there. And so I'd whip through some of these. I love owls. This is like, I think every barred owl I paint is snappy. I'm not sure they had wolves, but somehow that wolf got put in there. Bobcat, deer, fox, mountain lions. That was really, they have the coolest mountain lions. And bear. And they have bears there, and I painted them several times. And this is an early painting of a bear based on the ones from the Science Center. And it occurred to me like the animals in captivity, I'm really grateful for them being ambassadors for this species, as we always say, because they're, basically have given up their freedom so that they can educate the humans around them about who they are and what they need and what they're like. But there's a little bit of something there that's not wild, I guess, or less wild. And I think I was starting to pick up on the energy of animals along this time period. And so I decided I wanted to see animals in the wild more. And so I found out about this guy. And this is Dr. Lynn Rogers, and he's a little bit of a controversial figure, but he has pioneered the use of radio collaring black bears without sedating them. He basically gets the bears to trust him, and then he puts these collars on, and he's able to track bears in the woods. And then he can bring people out with him. And so I got to go there and hang out with his black bears. And it was an amazing experience. And talk about looking animals in the eyes. It was so incredible. Now, yes, I am feeding this bear pecans because that's what the bears really liked, and they really liked them. And they were just totally cool. Like they would come in and wander away and wander back. And he had this whole like series of bears that he knew, and he knew them all. He knew everything about their history and their grandmothers. And it was amazing. I got to look at bears in the eye. I got to like touch them. I mean, I didn't want to, he didn't encourage people touching them, but we got to be with them. We got to be with mamas and cubs. It was just, it was crazy. It was amazing. And so I painted those bears over and over again, and they were so beautiful. So these are some of the portraits I've done, and basically all the black bears I paint are from the bears I met there. And over the years, my style has changed, of course. I've incorporated different textures, and I put my words of gratitude into the paintings, and my prayers for the animals into the paintings. But this is one of my most recent ones, and this is a 4-foot by 4-foot painting. So it's pretty impressive, intense, I guess would be a word. But I'm just hoping that people can see the beauty and the beingness of these animals. This is also our most recent one. And then I thought about what other kinds of animals can I go look in the eye, and I got to thinking about polar bears and how much I love polar bears and how in trouble they are, and how maybe I could use my art to help serve polar bears in some way. So I found this company in Churchill, Manitoba, actually right outside Churchill, Manitoba, and they would take you out on these walks on the tundra with armed guides, and you would go and visit with polar bears. So we got to go do that. And this was quite a few years ago now, but this was Scarborough, and he has a little scar over his eye. I don't know if you can see that, but he got into a fight with a wolverine when he was a baby, which I guess is something you shouldn't do. But he was amazing. He just hung out with us one whole day, and we got to spend time with him. And I think he was, they're all habituated to humans in some level, but he was magnificent. And he had such presence, and he was like totally like, he knew like we were there, and he was like totally, I think he really liked being admired because we were in total admiration. And I think I took literally 6,000 pictures. And so it was kind of an interesting place because we were out on the tundra, we're in this camp, and we are in the cage, and the animals are roaming free outside the cage. And so this is the wire between us and the outside. And Scarborough would come every day and just kind of sit out there and wait for us to come out. You know, it was definitely like heart pounding to go outside with a wild polar bear, but we had guides. And he was so gorgeous. And he was also always testing the fence. And I asked them about this fence, and they said this was turkey fence. And I was like, he's a lot bigger than a turkey, but you know, obviously I survived. I lived to tell the tale. I got up one morning and got to hang out with him before anybody else got up. This was like the one morning in my life that I got up early to be with a wild animal. And we just, I don't know, we had a thing. I just basically said I would do what I could to help him and his kind. And it was really, I'm trying. So here's an idea of how close we were to him most of the time when there wasn't a fence between us. And those are the guides, and they had shotguns, which I learned later after we were almost done with the trip, that all they had in the shotgun was rock salt, which I think would have changed my whole approach if I had known that. But apparently polar bears really hate when you spray rock salt up their nose. So if you're ever confronted with a polar bear, you know that now. But God, he was gorgeous. And the light, you know, it was November. It was right before they went out onto the ice. They all converge in this area because it's a lot of fresh water going into Hudson Bay, which is salt water. And so it freezes first. And the bears just spend all winter out on the ice. And so they were all waiting for the ice to form when we were there. We were the last week. And so I painted him. I've given him a little makeover. I painted him over and over again. And these are some of the paintings I've done. And you can see some of my words there. Those are basically my prayers for the animals and my words of gratitude that I embed into all my paintings now. This is a more recent one. And then after the polar bears, of course, you know, what comes next? Grizzly bears, right? So, and Lynn Rogers convinced me that grizzly bears are no more dangerous than polar bears or black bears. So even though we are all conditioned to think of grizzly bears as very scary things, I found a company that you could go out and visit grizzly bears. And so there's a company for just about anything, I think. I found this place in British Columbia on the Narco River, which is up near, I don't know if people know Bella Coola, or it's not far from Lake Louise. That's just kind of off the screen, but absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous area. And so people think of grizzly bears as being very scary animals because we've been conditioned by movies and TV to think of them as just terrifying, like mad, like crazy beasts. And partly it's because of this guy and this bear. This bear is named Bart, and this guy has trained Bart to stand up and do these like scary growls and you know, that thing with his mouth. And most of the time grizzly bears are not this way. I mean, grizzly bears are just, you know, they're just like us. They're just there to protect their families. They're very territorial because they don't have the resources that other bears have. They need a lot of food to get through very long winters. And so they are not that tolerant of other competition from other people. But really, they're just really there to, you know, they're just like us in any way. So I got to go on this river, which was a salmon river, which was another one of the most amazing experiences because you know, you hear Salmon River and you think, oh, there's salmon, right? But no, this thing was carpeted with salmon. It had like the whole bottom was just salmon. It was crazy. And there were so many kinds of salmon. And I learned a lot about the ecology, which is super cool because the bears like eat the salmon and then they go into the woods and they poop, and basically all the resources and riches from the salmon get taken up by the trees, and it's just this amazing cycle. It's really, nature is just crazy cool. So we got to hang out with these bears, and they were like so focused on eating, they could care less that we were there. They were just there to like fill up their bellies with salmon, which they did. very well. Like that was what they did all day long. They basically would come to the river, they would like reach down, they would pick up a fish, they would smell it, because we were there when the fish were sort of already turning, they were already dying after spawning. And if it was tasted good, they would just rip into it. And this is a bear, like just kind of reaching down with his paws. It was a very kind of funny looking thing. And then he picked up a fish and he just like stripped it and ate it. And it was, yeah, as long as we didn't get between them and the fish, they were cool. So this one day we got to go, so we would get in these drift boats and we would drift down the river and they would be there. And one day we got to the site where we were going to launch, and this mom and her 2 cubs were there. And so we had to wait for them to move, and we were in the boats waiting, and more and more boats were coming because it was like this whole schedule of people who were going to do this thing. And our guide said, "That's it, we're going to go. We're just going to go." And we were like, "What? We're going to go between a mom and her cubs?" Like, we're not supposed to do that. And so these are a couple that we made friends with, and he was in the boat behind us. So this is him waving goodbye, like, hope, and his wife was documenting us about to be eaten by the bears. And that's their guide, and the look on his face is just priceless, I think. But we drifted past them, and the guide talked to the mama the whole time, and he was like, "You know me, it's okay, it's cool, you know me." And this was the look on her face. This is what I tried painting this for a long time before I caught it, but this was her watching us go by. There she is in real life. And this is her and her cub. So we went like between her and there was another cub off to the side, but she just watched us come. And there was her cub. And obviously I survived, and she was cool. Like she was just, we were all like, we're just being super respectful. And I lived to be able to paint pictures of her. And I tried to paint her over and over again. So this is a great quote from Frida Kahlo. "I paint flowers so they will not die." And I think my mission is to paint animals so they live forever, because I don't want to live in a world without wild animals. I don't want to live in a world without polar bears or grizzly bears or black bears or any kind of wild animal that we have here now. And so that's sort of what I do. And so this was a show I thought I'd share with you from the Sharon Art Center right before it closed. They had made this beautiful new gallery and then unfortunately closed. But I called the show "Never Can Say Goodbye," which is basically all the animals I never wanted to say goodbye to. And I opened with, of course, my polar bear. There he is. That's Scarborough. And this is a big painting. It's hard to see the scale, but it's like 3 feet by 5 feet. And there he is, a portrait of him. And of course, I included all the animals. Well, I couldn't include all the animals because the show wouldn't have, like, I'd still be painting it and the space wasn't probably big enough. But I also included elephants. I've never seen an elephant in the wild, but I hope to someday. I try to see all the animals I paint in real life, but somebody lent me this photo. Lions. I haven't seen lions in real life either, but I've gone to rescue places and seen lions, but I don't want to live in a world without lions or tigers or moose. As we know, moose are having a hard time here in all of North America, really. Bison. I did get to go to Yellowstone and see bison. That was with Mead. I went on an Antioch alumni trip, and that was the coolest thing, seeing a bison. Wolves. We saw wolves. They were very tiny, far away, but I never want to live in a world without wolves. There's the bobcat. Loons, of course. Who wants to live in a world without loons? Peregrines. And then I did a whole series of little creatures or littler creatures. So Blanding's turtle. I have a Blanding's turtle that comes up my driveway every year. She's the coolest. Does anybody know what this is? Raise your hands. I can't hear you. Susie does, of course. It's a lightning bug. Karen got it. Bumblebees, Luna moths, toads, spotted salamanders. Just don't want to live in a world without all these things. And so while I was working on this show, I was thinking about, like, all right, well, what else is there? What else do I want to not live in the world without? And I started thinking about all my trips to the Museum of Natural History in New York City when I was a kid. And they had in the Hall of Oceans, there's this replica of a blue whale. And it just blew my mind as a kid. Like, it was just like amazing thing. And you can lay down under it and look up at this creature, which is, it's life size. It's just insane how big blue whales are. And so I thought, all right, I don't want to live in a world without whales. I'm going to paint a bunch of whales. So I did the series, and I did the blue whale, I did humpback whales, and I did right whales, who are having a lot of trouble. But it made me realize, like, I really don't understand whales very well. I need to see whales more. And so I found a company that will take you out to see whales in the wild, and not just like whale watching. I wanted to be in the water with the whales and see the whales up close and personal. And so I got to do that. And that's been a transformative experience. Whales are just my new obsession, and they're just amazing. There's like so much we don't even know about humpback whales, which is the particular whale I am into right now that we go see on this trip. They're so intelligent, they're so beautiful, they're so graceful. And I got to look a whale in the eye. I got to go on this trip. It's an amazing experience. You go out for 6 days, you anchor off the coast of the Dominican Republic, and you basically go out on these little tenders, they call them, and you wait for a whale to be there. And if the whale seems okay with it, you put on your snorkel and mask and your flippers, and you just go in the water and you just float. Like, you don't like approach them, you don't snorkel. I mean, you don't scuba up to them or anything like that. You kind of just float on the water. You're supposed to be like a piece of seaweed. And we got to do that, and we got to have some amazing surface activity, as they call it. And the whales were like, they wanted to interact with us. It was crazy. I didn't know what it would be like, but the whales were really like, they were interested in us almost. And I got the sense that they were always sort of like waiting for us to catch up a little. Like, I feel like they're still waiting for us to catch up. So here's a little clip. Hopefully you all can see this. So I brought a camera with me, but I'm really terrible at photography. Not my forte, I've decided. But I had this little submersible camera, like an underwater camera, and I just stuck it in the water under, like off the side of the tender. And this is a little clip that I caught. So hopefully it doesn't make you seasick, but just gives you a sense of the whales. There's 2 whales, and they're coming over to look at this thing. He's reaching out to shake my hand. I hope it gives you a sense of it. I mean, obviously it's so much better than just that little clip, but to be interacting with these animals and to have them look you in the eye is just, it's miraculous. I can't believe I got to do it. And I'm just so grateful that I got to do it. And I've been trying to advocate for whales now through my art as well. So I've been painting whales a lot more. This was a portrait of that one of the female in that picture of that little clip was called Sanchal. They can tell the individuals by the patterns on their flukes, not their flukes, on their tails. And that is a fluke, sorry. And so we met Sanchal and Crossbeam, who actually, these are whales who come up here in the, they're down there in the winter. This is off the coast of the Dominican Republic. And then they come up here in the summer to feed, because this is where all the food is. And then they go down there to the nice, warm, shallow waters to give birth and to also mate. So Sanchal and Crossbeam were having a thing. And so I did her portrait as best I could. And so I'm trying to raise money for whales through my art. My goal is someday to be able to paint a life-size whale. This one is 100 100 inches long. Not quite there yet, but hopefully getting there. And I've been lucky to partner with organizations like the Center for Coastal Studies, and they've used my art to help do some of their fundraising, which is very meaningful for me. You know, I'm trying to advocate for the animals, and I'm also, I try to raise money for them. I take 10% of my profits every year, and I donate it to land trusts and to wildlife conservation groups, because I want to, I need to give back. I need to honor these beings, and hopefully it'll make some kind of difference. So art isn't hate, it's love. I mean, that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to express my love for the world through my art. And, you know, I think, you know, what else can you do? So thank you so much. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer questions. I hope that was interesting. And it's kind of weird not being able to see you or hear you, but I did my best, I guess. So thank you.
Rosemary, that was great. That was
Okay.
really great. Do you, yeah, wow. So many amazing comments. I loved Ruth shared a comment about how when you paint the animal's eyes, it helps us see ourselves and helps us make a connection to the animals.
Yay,
and that
yay.
really comes right through. And Ruth, I hope I said that as you wrote it. That was great. Do you want to stop sharing your screen and we can maybe see?
Oh yeah.
That we can see more? Yeah.
Okay. How do I do that? There you are.
Hello.
Is that...
Cool. Well, we have a few questions, and feel free to keep chatting your questions to me. But Victor was wondering, when you're painting, you're taking photographs, so you don't often paint from the actual live animal.
You know, animals do not stay still. They are really not good at holding a pose. So I've learned over the years that, I mean, I've been painting them all now for so long. I feel like I kind of know them well, and I kind of use the photos as references, and I play with them a lot in Photoshop, and I manipulate them. So I'm not trying to copy a photo. I'm really trying to capture the spirit and energy of an animal. So I guess the photo is a jumping off place. So yeah.
That's so cool. So you must, like when you were doing an elephant or a lion, you must spend some time really culling through images to find the image that really speaks to you to kind of start from.
Yeah, I mean, I always want to see the animal as much as possible. I went down to Florida. There's a place called Big Cat Rescue, which I guess is now everybody knows about because of that movie. Let's not go there. But so I went down there and spent some time with their lions and their tigers. And the elephant, I have a good friend, I don't know if he's a good friend, but he is obsessed with elephants. And so he goes to Africa every couple of years, and he lent me those photos. So I was very grateful to him. But hopefully, I don't know if I will survive a plane trip to Africa, but who knows, maybe someday.
So that does bring me to another question that I'm sure people are wondering about. I know that you are really into whales right now, but is there another animal on the horizon that you're beginning to feel sort of a tickle of interest in? Something?
Well, you know, I'm trying to be mindful of my impact on the world, so I don't want to like go on too many trips. I mean, all these trips are spaced out over several years. It sounds like I just like I'm jetting off to these places all the time, but I think my next trip, I'd love to spend some time with sperm whales. It's a totally different animal, totally, you know, they're a different kind of whale, but you can go swim with sperm whales. It's a very different experience. So I'm curious about that. I haven't gotten there yet, but we'll see. We'll see. But they need advocates as well.
Yeah, I love that. So any advice for people out in this audience tonight who might have an artist inside of them that's been waiting to come out, or somebody who's been dabbling? Any advice you would like to give them?
Oh, there's so many ways to be an artist. You know, there's no one right way. I mean, this is what I learned. You know, I didn't go to art school. I basically am making up what I'm doing. I'm like not following any rules here. And it's just, you know, you got to think about why you're doing it. And I think once you understand the why of it, so much will flow from that. Like, so if you love trees, you know, and you just want to understand trees better, that's a great reason to become a tree painter or a tree sketcher or whatever. But I think it's also important to have fun. Like if you're not having fun, then why do it? You know, like, I mean, I've been in a lot of classes where people, especially beginners, and they're painting and they're like ripping the thing and they're like, they got this look on their face and it's like, wow, you know, like it's just fun. Painting for me is joy. It's about love and joy and I think if you can capture some of that and put it into your art, it'll show. If you're tensed up and all that, that's going to show as well, I think so.
Yeah. Ruth's wondering, what kind of paints do you use?
I use acrylics because I'm allergic to turpentines and all that stuff. I learned to paint originally with oils, but I became allergic to oil paints. So acrylics are great. You can do almost anything with acrylics. You can paint like an oil painter. You can paint like a watercolorist. It's really wonderful. And I like to paint fast because I do lots and lots of layers in my work. And so I don't have time for things to wait for things to dry. So.
Love it. I don't know if you got to see Ray's comment. You had a lot of Carl Jung quotes up there, but he wanted to say that you exemplified Joseph Campbell, follow your bliss.
Oh, thank you. Thank you,
Yeah.
Ray.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So true. Well said, Ray. Thanks for sharing that. So here's one other question is, tell us a little bit about your new studio space, because I think that's an opportunity for people to see your art in person. And if you haven't had a chance to ever see Rosemary's artwork in person, it's worth a trip over to Francistown. So tell us about your new studio and when you're open.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, everything is so much better in real life. I mean, we all know that. So yeah, I just opened a studio in Francistown. It's on the main street. It's attached to the general store. And it's not part of the general store. It's the old fire station. And I'm going to have regular open hours that started last week. So Thursdays and Fridays from 11 to 4 and Saturdays 10 to 2. And so you can just come on over and say hi. I'll be there. You'll be able to tell it's my studio because there's a giant red-tailed hawk on the front of it right now. So I've been painting murals on the doors, so it's hard to miss.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
It's in a beautiful space, and it's so nice to have an art studio in a downtown like Francistown. I know that a lot of people who drive by are slowing down and seeing the art on the door, and then people are coming in. So we wish you lots of great luck there, and Francistown is lucky to have you there.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, I'd love to have people come visit, because otherwise I just sit there on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays like, oh.
I think that's all the questions we have, and people are just sending in a huge thank you. So Rosemary, thank you for sharing right from your heart your beautiful artwork, and they're stunning and you're amazing, and we are just lucky that you're in our world.